Folks, we're going to get started. So again, good morning and welcome to our session, everyone. We're glad you're with us today. My name is John Tomaso. I work at a small private school called Dominican University right outside the city in River Forest. We have a couple of great presenters today, and I think we have a very important and very timely topic with our session today. So we're glad you're here to learn more about this important topic. The Deferred Action 2014, this is really an update for qualifying undocumented students. And as we all know, this is a very timely and very important topic. And the two presenters we have today, first we have Tanya Cabrera, who wears a couple of different hats. Tanya is the chair of the Illinois Dream Fund, and I know she's working hard to make this not just a dream, but a reality for a lot of these young people here in Illinois. Tanya also is an associate director at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Joining Tanya is Quintiano Rios Perez, who wears a couple hats as well. Works in the Little Village area with 4 different high schools, and also works with the group called IACAC. Am I saying that right? Enlace, part of it.
Chicago.
All right.
That's the other conference.
So we have actually another conference at the other Roosevelt campus today, right? So the two presenters have some important information, and really we want to open this up and really have some good, meaningful discussion throughout the session. We have until 12:05. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Quintiano, who's going to begin for us.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the invitation. Again, my name is Quintiliano Rios Perez. I am a post-secondary coordinator at Little Village Lando campus. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Little Village High School, or the Little Village Lando campus, is a small school, follows the small school model. So it's divided into 4 high schools. They both have different focus areas. And this high school came as a result of a hunger strike from residents in Little Village and the Little Village community and Greater Lando. Parents got organized, and the organization that I work with now, Enlace Chicago, also took a part in kind of the struggle, because CPS, Chicago Public Schools, had a promised school in Little Village, and they didn't follow through. And so parents got organized. They actually arranged a hunger strike for 13 days, which resulted in the agreement from the Chicago Public Schools to invest money in creating this high school. So it's a relatively new high school, 4 different high schools within, and every high school has, again, their own focus: math, language, and other areas as well, sciences. Now, I work as part of a community schools initiative program from Chicago Public Schools. My role there is that I work for the organization, Enlace Chicago, a nonprofit community organization. But I'm stationed at the 4 different high schools. I work in the campus. And my role is as a post-secondary coordinator is to make sure that students are following through with their plans to go to college or to plan for after high school, depending on what that looks like to them. My role is unique in that campus because I work with undocumented students. I serve as an extra support to the counselors and to the students, and to actually demystify a lot of myths that are going around with the families themselves about their status, about thinking that they cannot go to college when they actually can, regardless of their immigration status, and to help them figure out how does that look like when they're the first one to go to college in the family, they have the required grades, or they need to improve their grades. And I help them map out that same plan, develop a plan, so they could go on into a post-secondary option right after graduating high school. We also work at a high school in the same neighborhood called Farragut Career Academy. And in Farragut, we also follow the same model. And again, there's one of me. There's one person who does the same job at Farragut Career Academy, which is a post-secondary coordinator. Now, my story, it's a little different, and it's full of challenges, like any of you or the people here present. But I actually came here when I was 10 years old. I moved into the Little Village community. I lived there for a year, and then moved to a community that you might know. It's called Back of the Yard. So I didn't know about this whole immigration status issue. I always knew, unlike many people, I always knew that I was undocumented. However, I didn't know what it meant. In elementary school, I was fine. It didn't really come up. In high school, freshman, sophomore year, it was okay. It didn't really come up until junior and senior year, when I actually was wondering, what does this mean? And I actually was told, well, first of all, you cannot apply for federal student aid. You cannot get a driver's license. That's something I found out the hard way through my driver's education course. And there's a lot of limitations that I was exposed to. So with that said, I try to make sure to keep up my grades, since I thought that would be the only way that I could get an education, which ended up being the right idea. I went to Kelly High School in the Brighton Park community, southwest side of Chicago. And I was fortunate enough to have a surrounding group of counselors, college coaches, and teachers who themselves, they created a private scholarship fund within the school to sponsor students, regardless of the status, to start their college career. And they call it the Pay It Forward Scholarship. This whole idea that you get help now, but then you gotta pay it forward to someone else. And definitely, during my senior year, it was tough, because at the time, and even until now, depending on the institution, it's hard to talk about your status when you're trying to figure out the cost of your education. And it will be hard to approach. I would always run around the topic, just kind of try to see, like, what do you know about immigration? What do you know about not having a social security number? Not really coming straight out forward and saying, you know what, I don't have a social security number, but I do have the qualifications. I do have the service. I do have all the stuff that you require for your institution, but the social security number. Luckily enough, thanks to the help of a lot of community scholarships, the scholarship that I just mentioned, the Pay It Forward Scholarship, and also with the help of other organizations, I was able to gather enough to pay for my first quarter of college. So that was a big risk, because I knew I could pay the first quarter, but I didn't know what to do about the rest of the 4 years. And also, I was lucky enough to bump into the right people. Thank you. Bump into the right people within the institution that I ended up getting my bachelor's at DePaul University. And that was a whole challenge, because I was lucky enough to bump into the right people who shielded me from people who might start asking questions. Though at the time it was a very controversial for the institution, it was half and half. Some people were just not informed. Some people were just. So it was hard for me to come out to people and talk about my status, because I had to be careful. So luckily enough, DePaul took me in. They actually helped me a lot with my education, and in 2012 I graduated with a bachelor's degree in communication and media. And that wouldn't be possible without the community support, without the support from the school, from my high school, from the support of my college, DePaul University. And at the end of the day, I graduated on June 8, 2012. And that was a big achievement, but I was like, now I can work, I have a degree, but I don't have a social security number to work. So at times, it's difficult to think about the future, because I never thought about the future. I always thought about the next quarter, the next semester, how to pay my next, my books, how to pay my next class. And but definitely that was a struggle that I found, just to be able to talk to the right people, or I always kind of stay quiet, and not because if I made it thus far in that institution, I didn't want to bring it up to someone who might say like, oh, well, you shouldn't be here, or oh, why are you here? And that would sabotage 3 years of study, 3 years of hard work. So that's something that I seen this changed with the creation of the Illinois Dream Fund, with a lot of efforts within the colleges and universities. So now you might have students that might come up to you and openly say, I'm undocumented and I need your help, or I want to figure out how to follow through with your institution and actually get a degree from your institution. So times have changed, thankfully, and although you still have those students who are very afraid to reveal the status, but thankfully there's things like these that are going on, and that at least they're giving you an idea of what this issue is about. And so I graduated on June 8, 2012, and then on June 15, 2012, they announced the Deferred action process, which you may hear more about, and you might be familiar with. So I stayed 6 months without a job because that was personal choice. I decided to start organizing and create workshops and create presentations on what Deferred action was, how do you apply, and my biggest concern was to make sure to inform people so they won't fall for expensive lawyer fees or notarios, which are public notaries, but they don't have the power. They don't have the legal power that they do have in Latin America, and notary publics may charge you for immigration fees and such. So that's something that I really saw the need in my community, and I purposely in back of the yards and in other communities started putting workshops, started answering questions, talking to people, talking to parents, helping people get an idea of what kind of documents do they need. So that took a while until somebody screamed at me and told me to apply for the Deferred action, because I had to practice what I preached. So I know I didn't apply for 6 months after it was allowed to, the process started. And it was part of me helping out, giving information, and part of me just delaying the process for me of applying. But now I applied, and again, this is a relief. They call it a relief Deferred action for those who don't have a social security number and now can work and have a way to contribute to the family. However, it's not a perfect system, and it's not the ideal solution for this issue. I think some of you might agree that some kind of immigration reform will be the most long-term beneficial solution for this issue, rather than just small solutions. And the reason why I say that is because I applied for the Deferred action. I got my approval. They send you a letter of approval and then the work permit. So I got the letter of approval, but I never got the work permit. I got lost in the mail. So now I had to figure out how to navigate this system, or how do you go about a lost work permit on the mail when this whole system is new. And probably none of the people running in USCIS, running these applications, probably didn't even know how to tackle that. So after a lot of calls, after a lot of dialogue with the people at the post office, I was able to, nobody offered me a straight answer. So at the end of the day, I ended up sending up my application again, because even the people at the hotline from USCIS were like, well, I don't know what you could do. I talked to an immigration officer. The immigration officer was like, send us your application again, pay me another $465, because it's not our fault that the mail lost it, so technically it's their fault. So obviously the mail is not going to pay me anything. The least I got him to do was to write me a letter saying that they lost it. And it was hard for them to do that, but I got him to do that. And finally I had to wait another 3-5 months. So now you had the delay that I didn't apply for 6 months, and then I had to wait because my work permit got lost. So technically I had the Deferred action, but I didn't have a way to work. So now I think it was worse than not having not having the Deferred action. So I was able to, again, after checking the mail every day, bothering my mailman and the director of the USPS office, I was able to get my work permit. So I started working as a post-secondary coordinator for Enlace, because I went through the same experience, and I wanted to make sure that these students didn't fall through the cracks, and that these students learn how to advocate for themselves like I did. Because when I graduated, when I walked on stage for DePaul University getting my bachelor's, I looked back and I realized that none of the people who went to high school with me, who were in the same staff, who were undocumented, none of them made it, at least with me. So I kind of realized that I was the only one that kind of made it, and I realized that I should do something about it. So now I'm back helping out the students, figuring out, talking to the parents who have a lot of questions, talking to the students themselves, and just letting them know that they don't have to give up, that they shouldn't give up because of their status, and that You know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of intense work. It's a lot of emotional and emotional turmoil. But at the end of the day, you're able to get an education, and now hopefully we need to have this whole immigration reform or some kind of relief that way the students could stop worrying about their parents being deported and they could start worrying about their education. So the students can stop worrying about how to pay for college, and they could stop worrying about working so they could help out their parents because their parents don't make enough or they get laid off. So a solution will definitely be needed, a long-term solution, and we hope that that's achieved within the next month, so that, or very soon, because it's urgent and it's needed, and there's obviously a lot of issues that rise up with that. With that said, thank you so much. I'm just going to leave it up to Ms. Cabrera.
He's actually very modest. He actually has his own. Quintin Pero, his band, and he has a few hits out. You guys should just take a listen to. But he's done a lot of work in the community and been a big inspiration for a lot of students who are in this situation, and very helpful, resourceful. His contact information will be at the end of the presentation, along with mine and Maria. Lucio, Maria and I, we say we're sisters, but we're not. But we look alike, so everybody's like, "Hey, Maria," and I say hello. But Maria is actually, we thought there's an Electric conference going on along with IACAC today, so we thought, we're like, oh, perfect, they're at the same campus, we could do this. But it's at the Roosevelt campus downtown, and obviously we're here in Schaumburg. I gave you a brochure. Rob Perrell, the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, hired Rob Perrell and Associates to do some data work on immigration status, undocumented populations across Illinois. So as you're recruiting, how many college reps do we have in the room? Representatives? Okay. So as you're out recruiting, you can kind of survey the area. And Champaign, Urbana, actually has the largest and most diverse population. So Parkland College of undocumented students in that area. And then we noticed that everybody's like, oh, Pilsen, little village. And it's actually more of this population is moving out to the suburbs. Aurora, Waukegan. So this should be a good resource for you to take back to the office if you want. Email me, I'll forward it to you. My file was encrypted. I had NACUB, the National Association of Colleges and Universities Business Office. A lot of the community colleges have been issued with the 1098-T form, saying that students need to apply. In order for them to be enrolled at a community college in Illinois, they need to have a social security number or an ITIN number. So just some background on that, and I'll forward it to IACAC, and you guys can put it on your website. But it's encrypted on, I think I have 20 files on my flash drive. So I wanted to go, I think everybody's aware of who an undocumented student is. It's important at the institution level and as counselors that we make sure they're being entered properly through the admissions process. And if how many of you have filled out the IACAC human resource, the link that talks about what you do for undocumented, I'm going to get it wrong, Aliza.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Illinois IACAC website has a guide called the College Advising Guide for undocumented students, and one of the links to it is asks colleges their information. So if there's any college here that has not yet filled that guide out, I would encourage you, I would actually beg you to do so. It's just iacac.org/undocumented, and you'll see the link. It asks very basic questions that high school counselors and students are desperately trying to get answers to be able to better aid our students. And if your school is listed, just do a quick check and make sure that the information is accurate. It can easily be updated at the same link.
I second that.
Yes, I
Please
beg
fill it
you
out
humbly.
if you can.
It's important information, and so instead of students getting the runaround and having their parents not knowing the process, as well as counselors, it's really helpful for your institution to understand that it's a huge resource to families and students across Illinois. Why this issue is so important, I know if any of you guys saw the Time magazine where Jose Antonio Vargas came out publicly about being undocumented and also being coming from the gay community. And he came out about all the undocumented students within the U.S. Here in Illinois, we have about 511 undocumented students in Illinois. And the big thing, one of the first slides that we had was about the deportation, not one more. The increase of deportations are still going on. Every 3 minutes, a family member is deported and separated from their loved ones. So as a mom, I'm expecting 2 girls, and I would freak out if this happened to me. So understanding that the mental health issues behind this, foster care limbo, I'll show you some stats. It was supposed to be $1,500 per year. It's actually $42,000 in 1 year alone. So these are 42,000 children between the ages of 4 months and 14 years of age who have been separated from their families. Not only that, but then they're also separated from their siblings, and they only have 90 days of communication with one another before they lose contact altogether from the family. Some changes in the legislation. Family Education Act, FERPA, is something we encourage all students to apply for. When they transition to a 2-year or 4-year institution, the FERPA will actually protect them from the institution releasing their information. So in case they come up for residency and they're at court and they ask them to prove whether or not they're in an institution, they could ask the information from the student, but they can't get it directly from the institution. It protects them. So as your students in this situation start applying to colleges, make sure they talk to someone and fill out the FERPA. It'll protect them. We had many students who didn't sign this. They were able to release information and tell them, oh, you have to withdraw from the institution. And when they did that, they lost their status to be here and continuing their education as an undocumented student, and they were eligible for deportation proceedings. So it's important that they do that.
Where do they apply?
Monday?
Where can they apply?
The FERPA?
Yeah.
The institution, it's usually on their financial aid website or their admissions. They can apply for that, yeah. Obviously, the DREAM Act, the Illinois DREAM Act, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But the HB 60, in-state tuition. I know a lot of people, a lot of colleges and universities have called me and said, I have a student who's here, who got a GED, who's been here for 7 years. Do we give him or her in-state tuition? And we ask that you use professional judgment on that part, and of course I'm going to say yes, that you should transfer. But it's really professional judgment on the institution of whether or not to provide that student access to in-state tuition. We already know how expensive it can be for a student to pay out of pocket. And because Plyler Versido allows them to have free education, the K-12 pipeline, it's what happens after high school, right? What finances, what resources are available to them? Again, the IACAC HR link, that's something that needs to be completed. But this protects them. Again, the FERPA is there, but it also protects them. How do we support them afterwards? Public institutions in Illinois cannot necessarily offer merit or need-based aid. There are policies and procedures within certain institutions. The U of I system, for example, UIC, Chicago, Champaign, Springfield, they do offer some opportunities for admissions, but even though they switched to the Common App, for some reason, and something that they're working on, they actually established an undocumented student committee to review the process in regards to when they come through admissions, they're seen as international students. So then they start sending them information as international students. So they're trying to tweak that process and catch them early on, identify them before they apply, and have them say, hey, on your application, check your status, complete an affidavit form so we can review your application, let us identify you early on. Another issue that students are looking into is that if you declare a major within those 3 systems, there's different prices. College of Engineering is about $18,000, LAS, Liberal Arts and Science, $17,500. So looking at the different numbers, they could go undecided and kind of wait out to decide their major. For financial reasons, might be a little bit more suitable for the family. But that's, again, $17,000 out of pocket. The only way that you're going to be able to finance this is paying out of pocket directly. There are payment plan options or private scholarships that are available to them. So we want to make sure those students, there is still a population that may not be eligible for deferred action, but those who are eligible for deferred action, we want to be mindful that they only use this for work purposes, okay? And yes, they can apply for job opportunities on college campus that are non-federal work study. So if there's an opportunity to work on campus, they can apply, but it can't be federal work study, all right? So I know colleges are like, no, we can't hire them. Yes, you can. They are eligible. They have a work permit for 2 years that allows them access to work. So we don't want them using this DACA number to apply for Social Security number, for scholarships on college applications solely for work purposes, okay? I know a lot of kids are like, oh, I have a Social Security number. But once they check that off, they apply to the institution, oh, don't forget to fill out your FAFSA. Then they assume they're eligible to complete a free application for federal student aid, which we had about 913 DACA students in Illinois apply to. Some of the students were overseen in the verification process and awarded money. The institution will receive a fine, a very hefty fine, I might add. The student will have to pay that back with interest, and now even though they were protected by deferred action, they are now eligible for deportation proceedings. So it's something that we have to really advise our students early on. And I know they may not self-identify until their senior year, but if we could catch them as early as their freshman or sophomore year, get them in these summer enrichment programs and identify them, we're way better off servicing them. And the renewal grant for DACA opened up on February 20th, so it gave them a 120-day grace period to reapply for deferred action. Do you have any other updates?
Tanya?
Yeah.
Address the question I think a lot of us are wondering in regards to, for students who are approved under deferred action, so obviously they've gone through a background check from Homeland Security, which is kind of like the granddaddy of all background checks, right? So how does that translate for students now wanting to pursue fields of study in Illinois that require a background check, like nursing or teaching or even cosmetology?
Sure. Cosmetology is the one because they for-profit institutions offer certifications in the program, but even the community colleges offer, and it's important that they get an accredited certification versus,
Right.
Mario Tricoci is about $20,000. They're able to apply for loans, but it's still something that they're going to have to pay back.
But that piece about licensure, right?
Licensure, yeah. So with Governor Quinn, Teres Areas in the governor's office is actually working. They now are eligible for teaching certification, so they can take the Illinois teacher's exam. So students who want to go into teaching, I'm meeting with Pat Kildoff from the Golden Apple Scholarship to see, that's a $23,500 scholarship open to students who want to go into teaching, counseling, or social work. We're trying to convince the Golden Apple to open up this scholarship to undocumented students because they have access to this, and in hopes that legislation will change. I have like 42 slides. No, I'm just kidding. I have 20 slides, but I want to get through them all. But the one issue that we're running across is the medical. Once a student gets his certification, what happens? Now they're going to have to get insurance. DACA students are not eligible for insurance. They're not covered by Obamacare. So this is the tricky part where institutions, like if we hire them, how do we offer benefits to them? So that's the issue, and everybody's freaking out like, well, we can't offer them that. Well, they have employment. They're going to be working for us. We offer all our employees benefits, and that's what we're looking for.
So they can, well, past the certification, the question is not just employment still, because
Yeah.
of that insurance employment.
So we currently have 22 students, Jordanian, Latino, Pakistani, and Korean students, a very diverse group of 22 students in Illinois who actually took exams and are teaching in Illinois. And I want to know what kind of benefits they get, what kind of pay they're actually, that's why I want to know what's financially, are they getting paid properly? Kitty and I had an issue this morning on that.
So they can do the medical part?
Yes, they can. So ultrasound
Licensure.
technician, and I'll go right next to the next slide. 73% of our medical workforce, technicians, doctors are immigrants. So with the 2025 shortage in the medical field, they're opening this gap. IBIC, Illinois Business Immigrant Coalition, is enforcing past comprehensive immigration reform. The impact, financial impact that it could have on the economy, not only in Illinois, but across the U.S. They're trying to get other businesses across the U.S. to organize. There's about 351 businesses in Illinois who have signed on to support this. It's something that 1.5 trillion will boost the economy in over 10 years. So, good question, guys. In June 20th in Seattle, Washington, for those of you who can make it out there, I think someone from IACAC should go. The 18 different states who offer in-state tuition will be having a conference in Seattle, Washington, to talk about their best practices. So California, New York, everybody coming together in Seattle to talk about this issue and how we could support each other at a national level. Michael Olivas, who's done a lot of work in California on this, will be presenting, along with Meng So, who's undocumented student liaison at UC Berkeley. So I know it's summertime, you may be off, but something you may want to budget into there. The DREAM Act, where it sits right now in the legislation, I know students say that, oh, I have the DREAM Act. You have deferred action, you have a 2-year work permit. So understanding the verbiage, they sometimes get confused about it. There is no federal legislation at this point. We do have the Illinois DREAM Act, and I'll go into that. But a lot of people say, oh, they're going to be taking money away from, students who need funding and not eligible for any funding other than institutional aid and private scholarships. There are some loans. Discovery, the card rate, offers loans to students, but at a 13% interest rate. A lot of students go in and take this as, hey, it's an opportunity for me to pay for school, but it's also at a very high rate. The Illinois Public Act, these are for students. Now, some of the students may not qualify for this, and again, there's a population that it services and a population that it leaves out. If they graduated from Illinois high school or they received a GED, they signed an affidavit, they can receive in-state tuition. An affidavit form, public institutions mainly use this form, not necessarily private institutions. I know we don't use it at IIT. We ask students to self-identify. Dominican does the same, ask students to self-identify early on to the Office of Admissions so we can work directly with the student and help them navigate the process. Again, another reason why you should fill out the IACAC website.
Tanya, does the affidavit have to be notarized?
It does have to be notarized. What freaks a lot of kids out is they're like, oh, now I have to go to a notario, I have to pay him. You could go to your high school clerk, someone at the institution. They may not have the high school ID, but they could show their transcripts. And at the school, the kid. You could actually get it someone, maybe a clerk or someone in the business office can sign off and notarize this form. Okay? And a lot of institutions will not. Northeastern, UIC, you'll need this form to be submitted with the application in order to be reviewed for admissions. So it goes hand in hand with the application process. Oakton Community College is one of the community colleges offers resources. What is that? How do we help these students? Is faculty trained? So asking these questions to your institution. What is the process at your institution? Luis Caballero is actually no longer at Oakton. I think he's going to Korea or China. Yeah. But Andrina Esparza is now working in his place. She's a great resource as well. She used to be with Chicago State University, so she just joined Oakton's team, and she'll be working with the undocumented student population there. A big question is that we encourage that you do not have an undocumented student complete a FAFSA. We know it's a hard copy, but there's other institutional forms that you have to evaluate a student on a need-based or create an award package for them. So we want to stay clear from, and even the U.S. Department of Education, which is very upsetting, and we were trying to get representatives to kind of talk about this, and they don't want to touch it. But they say, oh, you can fill out a FAFSA, you'll get rejected, but that's okay. We don't want to give any false beliefs that these students can actually get federal aid, because they cannot. So I'm really disappointed by the U.S. Department of Education for having this process opening and assuming that it's something these students can do, because it's really misleading, and it just opens the avenue for something bad to happen. With regards to the Illinois Dream Fund, last year,
Good question. If the student has a social security number, but the parents don't, they can fill out a FAFSA.
Absolutely.
absolutely, and that's something that, it's a kind of, again, the runaround process, because the smart grid on the, not smart grid, but the smart tech on the FAFSA. Oh, you entered something wrong. You have to call FAFSA, their 800 number, and kind of go through this lengthy process. But the student is eligible for aid. Yeah, the parent would enter zeros, not an ITIN number, just zeros in the place of Social Security number. Sure. Good question. So last year for the Dream Fund, we received 1,473 applications. This year, we went online, thank God, because manually entering on an Excel spreadsheet, 1,473 names is a little bit too much. So we went online this year. A lot of issues with students saying that they could not get letters of recommendation, confidentiality. What happened is that in order to get that link, it was going to cost us another $3,000. We don't have an operating budget, so my tax dollars reimbursement went to fund it, but it's really difficult. I don't know why anyone would write, sometimes they feel obligated to write these letters of recommendations on behalf of the student, but the student would have to upload it, scan it, and put it on their application. So we're looking to get some more money. And I actually put, you guys got a flyer, we have a 5K coming up on April 6th. If you run, walk, you can bring your dog, your kid, you can come help us out to raise funds for 2 scholarships, the Dream Fund and the Guadalupe Reyes Scholarship. So this year we had 2,447 applications submitted online. So going through that process, we do have a large chunk of students who have incomplete applications, and we're trying to get some people together to contact them. Last year we contacted each student. We want to do the same this year. I know it's like, oh my God, how are you gonna do that? But we wanna make sure that they're aware of resources and a pipeline that they and their family can follow. So 2,000 at the community college level, 6,000 at the four-year level. Again, it is not renewable. We have about $300,000 in the bank right now, but we also have 36 students that we awarded last year who are now 17 of them are transitioning to four-year schools this fall. So again, offering a $6,000 scholarship versus a $2,000 scholarship. So trying to see if we can refund those students, and then also another cohort of students. And it's all about governor's having an event on the 21st, a cocktail reception at a law firm. I'll forward details on that later. But again, it's just raising money. All the money right now is towards scholarships. None of it is towards operating budgets. So the money will impact the students somewhere here in Illinois.
Tanya?
Yeah.
How likely is an applicant to actually receive one of those scholarships? About 2,500 or so apply. What do you kind of think?
We go through the entire, I read every application, then we allow this, there's 22 people who actually review the application process. It was a blind read, and they don't necessarily see the student's information. They're assigned a number code, and let's see, 67%, and I don't want to get the numbers wrong, 67% were Latino, 14% were Middle Eastern, I think it's 6 or 3 from Africa, from Asia, and then 3% from the African community. So it was a very diverse group. It wasn't just, and that's something that was shocking to me as reading the applicants is, I'm not sure what resources are available to the Ukrainian and Polish community. I'm not sure the Asian students that we wanted to award said that they can't take the money because they did not tell the institution that they were undocumented because their parents would refuse the funding. Hide and continue to hide amongst the Filipino community. And I was like, well, we want to award you the money. And I said, there's no other way we could, it comes from the Chicago Community Trust, who's our fiscal agent, and then we're able to give you the funding. It doesn't say Illinois Dream Fund. They're like, no, I can't let the school know my status. And then, and then the student says an international student, I'm like, don't worry, it's not going to, my parents will not allow it. So that was a big issue that we had going on. But it's very, percentage-wise, in our first year, we awarded 36 out of that 1,473. So it really comes down to the finances. We did ask Facebook for $1.5 million. They asked us to get 500 more likes, so like us on Facebook.
That's easy to do, right?
Yeah, well, we have about 697 likes, so we need 500 more. I think we're up to like maybe 700, but like us on Facebook. Because then they'll award us $500,000. And that, I know it's like, it is a lot of money, but I really want that 1.5. So we're hopeful that we'll get that for them. We have another follow-up meeting with Cheryl Sandberg to say, hey, whether we get that 500 or not, we need that money. I wanted to quickly go over, Senator Patty Murray back in November introduced a bill that has really remained silent and something that could impact so many people. It's $750 million over 10 years, an actual grant, an opportunity for undocumented students to have access to some funding. And it's kind of, I haven't heard anything about it when people talk about it, like, oh, it's still on the floor, but it may not be reviewed in April, maybe in September. We're waiting for comprehensive immigration reform to pass, and I'm hearing people that, oh, Obama's not going to be able to pass it because of the Republican, putting the blame on the Republican Party. And it's really holding our current president responsible for enacting something. He has the power to do something. And, I'm going to go Lolita Lebron on him if he doesn't pass anything. She was a Puerto Rican nationalist who shot up Senate. I don't know if I'm going to do all that. But I wanted to go back about the separation of families and how many, a really good piece, Shattered Families, an article, and I put the link there. Talk about an estimated 5,100 children currently living in foster care, detained or deported parents. Nearly 15,000 more children are expected, and that number is actually 42,000. Okay, so that's a very large number to think about. I want to open it up to questions. So here are some resources. Sorry, the link, I was working on a Mac. I don't know why it's going to come up here. But the IBIC link is on one of the slides. Obviously, IACAC, the first slide that I have here. The Choose Your Future website tomorrow at IIT. We're hosting a statewide Dreamers Conference. We have a large population of students coming, not only from the city, but from across Illinois, which is really exciting. We're doing a 2 to 4 year pipeline, and I want to pass that information on to you because we have UICs giving information, SIU Carbondale. Is anybody here from Carbondale?
Ray Diaz is here somewhere.
Yeah, they offer some full rides, which I was really happy to hear, and now I want to look for all those scholarships. But they'll be there tomorrow, and then we have the private institutions, Dominican University will be representative, IIT and Loyola, about the scholarships that we offer, so that students really know their options and how to plan accordingly from a 2-year to a 4-year or going right into a 4-year institution. Educators for Fair Consideration, Catherine Jen, they'll also be presenting on June 20th in Seattle, Washington. Talked about IBIC. Okay. The Immigrant Youth Justice League, a group of organizations that organize events, shout-out events that publicly come out about their status. But they're also very organizing in the stopping of deportation of families. One of our fellow commissioners, Rigo Padilla, is actually working with families right now in Minnesota, and he's due back today. ICER, the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, we got the Rob Perel report. NASFA, if you're heavy on data and want some information, especially for institutions of higher ed, here's where you'll get a state evaluation of what's going on. And then NIJC, what we told every applicant for the Illinois Dream Fund, we asked NIJC for $100,000, and they offered something actually a little better. Free application for DACA review for every applicant for the Illinois Dream Fund. And I called Mary McCarthy and I said, hey, I know last year we got 1,000, now we got 2,000. She's like, well. But each of the students, whether they're awarded or not, will receive deferred action review. If they're not eligible for deferred action, they will receive free pro bono review from an immigration lawyer from NIJC. So that to me is pretty priceless. Here's our contact information, cell phone numbers or contact information. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to us. If you're having issues with an institution, I'll gladly make a call on behalf of the Dream Fund for you to see what's going on and put some pressure in to say, hey, I just want you to know you could accrue a fine if you don't allow this process to go through. Or just simply letting the institution know that, hey, this is how immigrant friendly we are in Illinois, and if you don't have those policies in place, it's something that you should look to have by fall of 2014. And we have 3 minutes?
We have until about 12:05 or so, maybe a few minutes after. For questions?
Sorry.
Comments? Input? Insight? Anyone?
I want to clarify, what's the name on the Facebook page that you need all those likes for? Because that may
Recreative Del Run Walk.
Oh, that's the 5K event, but it's the Illinois Dream Fund.
Is it IL Dream Fund?
Yeah, IL Dream Fund, yeah.
Oh, that's the one
oh,
that
you
needs
can
the
do it on your
likes?
phone, perfect, yes. Get your kids there.
It's IL Dream Fund, so if you search Illinois Dream Fund, you won't be able to find it.
Yeah, IL Dream Fund.
Maybe this could be a pitch made at the larger conference coming up in early May.
We're going to put it on the IACAC listserv
Perfect.
long before then, so it'll be out by the end of the day. And if anybody's a member of ISCA, that would be great.
Yeah, no, that'll be, I don't know why they're being, I'm like, we brought Cheryl, 5 of our students, and they came fully dressed to the T, and their shoes were a little messed up, and I said, hey, we're gonna take them to DSW afterwards. And she got emails from all the kids, and she had her assistant mail them a $100 gift card to DSW. So I'm like, we're gonna get the money, we're gonna get the money. But then, then we're like, well, we evaluated everything, gave her all the numbers she needed, where the demographics of the population the kids were coming from, and just, we provide it to anyone who's gonna give us money. But we don't release names. That's one thing that we won't do is release who was awarded the money, what institutions they're going to, just for security purposes. And the institutions really don't want us to release that information as well. So just to protect the student and the institution. So, thank you. You had a question?
Yeah, we have a large Hispanic population, and I find it really difficult to engage the community and the parents and get them to come to the school. Do you guys offer any kind of community outreach?
I'll come out until May.
What's that?
I said I could come out until May.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
How far are you?
We're just south of Waukegan, North Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So about an hour out of the city.
What school?
North Chicago Community High School.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm in recruiting girl. I guess I can do it. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to connect with families. If there's someone that doesn't necessarily look like a person or speak the language, it does become difficult. I'm actually trying to learn Arabic right now. We have a large population. Huh?
In your spare time.
Yeah, in my spare time. I know, I feel like my time is limited. Like, you could stay for another 5 months and be okay. But they're due at the end of June, so I don't know. But yeah, if we wanted to do a webinar. We've been talking about doing a webinar and just having an information session. I'm really excited about tomorrow's panel because Leticia Moreno, who's also part of the LASFA, the Illinois Association of Financial Aid Counselors, she has got the title of undocumented student. So she's teaching financial aid counselors at 2-year and 4-year institutions in Illinois how to create award packages for undocumented students. So I'm like, great blueprint, take it to your people, tweak it however you need to make it happen, but just, make it happen. And private institutions are more expensive, but they are able to offer aid. We really encourage students to start at the 2-year pipeline and then transfer in. There's more financial scholarships offered at the private level. I know at IIT we offer a $25,000 transfer scholarship if they have a 3.5 GPA or higher. They could appeal on a case-by-case basis, and we could probably estimate up to $30,000 in financial aid, leaving a balance of anywhere from $9,000 to $11,000 for an academic year, split up into 2 payment plans.
What's your, what's the easiest way for us to identify a student that's on deferred action? Because if I just ask them, do you have a social security number, they're going to say yes, and then that's going to cause the issue. So what's the easiest way?
I think when I go around talking to students, I said undocumented students have access to education. You can go to college. There's no law restricting you from college. So letting them know you're like the go-to person about that, and you're someone in a safe zone. Educators for Fair Consideration has these posters for $10 that you can put on your door, really affordable. You should tell your principal or your administrator that you could do something like this, or create your own undocumented student-friendly resources for dreamers, what have you. But if they know there's someone to self-identify. We really want to have someone who actually has that title, undocumented student liaison. I'm the only one in the state with the title. I know a CPS counselor had it, but she went on maternity leave, and I'm not sure she let go of that title. But we want to make sure that every institution, I think that's something within the IACAC.
Sure, so I think there's a couple things. I think one is you don't ever want to ask, right? And you don't ever want to keep a list. As public high school counselors, we are all subject to Freedom of Information Act requests, right? So you never want to keep a list, and you don't really want to ask. But similar to how we encourage our gay and lesbian students to come out, you want your students to come out to you. So think about the things that you have around your office that would speak to an undocumented student, and think about how you word your presentations to students. So there's actually, I came across it when I was in Washington last week, but if you search Dreamers Welcome NEA, there's actually a link to a poster done by an artist in California. Lou, you already have it. Her name is Fabiana Rodriguez, and it's a poster that she did of a monarch butterfly, and it says Dreamers Welcome. And you can print that, and you can put that on your door, and you can put that in your counseling resource center, and you can put that in your offices. And what that says to that dreamer is that you're a dreamer ally. Right? So similar to, we used to have, or many of us still do, have rainbows on our doors indicating to students that this is a safe place for you to come out. It's saying the same thing. The poster that Maria is talking about from Educators for Fair Consideration is a great poster. It's $10. It says undocumented students can go to college. You just can't buy it at the current moment because they don't have the means to take it.
Dreamers what?
Search Dreamers Welcome, 2 words, and then NEA. So do a search. Dreamers Welcome NEA. Like National Education Association, and you'll see it to that probably, I think that's the link. There you go, that's it.
Boom.
It's a wonderful poster, you can print it, and it's done by, it's worth reading the link. Fabiana Rodriguez is a really interesting artist out of California who donated her time for this. And on the website, on the NEA website, they talk about why she chose a butterfly. It's a very sweet article. But I think the word is getting the word out to students that it's okay for them to share with you. And so thinking about in your presentations, when we talk to freshmen, we talk about, anybody can access college. Obviously grades are important, but, you can have full need, no need, be a citizen, be undocumented. Just throw that language out there and don't make a big deal out of it. And you'd be surprised at the students who will surface at your door and say, hey, I think you just said something that spoke to me. But the one thing that you don't want to do is ask a student. That's not legal.
Sure. No, good advice. Another great resource, Lizzie Gilbert,
It's pregnancy brain.
You know what? I'm brain farting 24/7. It's so bad. So I know we're out of time. If you can't make it to the 5K, feel free, a shameless plug, to donate. Any contribution is really greatly appreciated. You'll also get a letter from a former recipient of the scholarship. We sent you, and they'll send you a letter each time you donate to let you know how they're doing in school, what they've done, and so on. And we actually have four of the recipients graduating this year from institutions in Illinois, and actually Pomona and Dartmouth outside of Illinois. So the scholarship is not only awarded for Illinois, but they can also use it at an accredited institution anywhere throughout the U.S.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank research done with some demographics about undocumented students.
Yeah,
which
that's
might
mainly
wanna
for
pick
your
up.
recruitment purposes. As you're going out, just be mindful when you're in certain areas. That question, maybe having a sign, printing out that poster, taking it on the road with you and propping it up on your table so that students know you have some resources available. And also maybe getting some verbiage on your admissions website or financial aid to share with students and families, like, oh, here's a link for some more resources. But thank you for coming out. Thank you for all of the work that you do at your schools, at your institutions, and the impact that it has on students and families. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. We're heading back down to lunchtime now, back down to around across the courtyard, back to where we started this morning.